Hey, yo, it is, what is it today? Tuesday night. And that
All
means
day.
it is the 49ers throwback show. This is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. And as with me always on Tuesday is So Real Suneil from So Real Sports Talk TV. How's it going, Suneil?
It's going great, man. We taking the show on the road a little bit, but I'm not gonna miss the show with you, Jack. So we're here live streaming from Portland, Oregon, but
Hey,
still got to
that's
make
the
it for Tuesday night show.
no, that's awesome, man. It shows the dedication you have to doing this. I really appreciate it. And on the road, awesome. That's just a couple folks really quick. We have Savory Movie 197 Evening Jack. Can't wait to hear what you have to say about the Niner season to begin. Let's get it going. CJ Gray, let's go Jack. Sunil as well. And then Bang Bang Niner Gang. Bang Bang, we in this thing. All right. So perfect. Let's get this party started. It's gonna be a lot of fun this season, I think, with the 49ers. And we're the week one is right around the corner. A couple of things to touch base on though before we get into the game. We're going to talk about some quarterbacks because why not? That's the hot topic, obviously, around 49er land. E.
Sure.
Kim joining the show as well says, "Hey, Jack and Sunil, let's start with the report that came out from Albert Breer. He had his Monday morning quarterback article thing where he has a bunch of different articles, and a little piece of it was on Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. And in the original, he said that Trey Lance was annoyed when it was first brought to him about Jimmy Garoppolo joining the 49ers. He since went back and kind of changed that around a little bit. He didn't like the phrase he used there, the annoyed portion of it. But I think it's still kind of, he softened it a little bit. He probably had somebody call him up that didn't like what he had to say. Uh, what do you make of Trey Lance being not being happy with Jimmy Garoppolo coming back?
See, I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know what happened with my voice right there. I don't know. Like, it didn't specify what exactly he was quote unquote annoyed with, right?
Mhm.
Because there's a multitude of things that it could have been about. I think it's easy, like people just go to assume that it's that Jimmy's back on the team. It might not be that. Like if I was Trey Lance and then I hear that Jimmy's coming back, I think he has a great relationship with Jimmy. What I think he's annoyed is that he understands that for the whole season, this is going to be a storyline that he's going to be asked about continuously. And when you're a quarterback that's just wanting to focus on the team and what it takes to win, to have this conversation because he knows this is what the media is going to talk about and bring about, like Trey Lance was blocking people on Twitter that was constantly talking about how he wasn't good and Jimmy's better and all this kind of stuff, right? Like I
Mhm.
think that he's just annoyed by this whole narrative because I think in reality there isn't that much beef between Jimmy and Trey. I think they get along really, really well. I think I find Trey as a very genuine person. So the fact that when Brock Purdy and Jimmy were listed on the 53-man roster, the first person to congratulate them was Trey. And I think that's not for show. That wasn't fake. I think that's genuinely who he is. Like he understands, this is his team. He understands that, this is, he's the starter and, these guys are just there to help him get better. And, if God forbid he got injured, but I could see him being completely annoyed with the fact that he's going to have to answer these questions week after week after week, or he's going to have to see these stories in the media, which you're seeing, right? Like the fact that all of these stories are coming up, Kyle isn't secure with Trey, Kyle is questioning Trey, all these kind of things. It's not coming from anything other than people creating narratives just because this move was made. When in reality, I feel like, and I think you are on the same page, you're getting a chance to get a quarterback that you've had success with at $6.5 million. Like it's a bargain deal, and I think that's the reason why Jimmy's on this team, not because of any reflection upon Trey.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's when it comes to if Trey Lance was annoyed, what Brewer later changed it to is that it was complicated news to take, is what he said, in regards to the Garoppolo thing. So Lance was feeling some sort of a way about it, and I can understand feeling maybe for a minute or two, or in the very beginning, and then you sit back and you realize you can maybe compartmentalize your thoughts a little bit more and understand, hey, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. If Trey, when I first saw this yesterday, my thought was, if Trey Lance has a problem with this, then who cares? And I know that's kind of a bad way of looking at it, but the reason I say it is because if Trey Lance has a problem with who his backup is, then there's bigger problems. And that's something that Breer said as well when I read his piece later. And so, again, and that goes back to last year as well, when the 49ers made the move and got to move up to 3, and everybody knew they were going to get a quarterback. That I think people were asking the question in the reverse, right? Is Jimmy Garoppolo upset because the 49ers are trying to replace him? And my answer last year was, who cares? That's not your job. Your job is to go out and play quarterback. And I do like what you said. I think you were a little bit more softer in your wording on it, and that was correct too. And I think that Trey Lance is a guy who he's mature. He understands that things happen, and I think if there's any kind of unsettledness around him, he needs to understand that the 49ers have, at least from what they've said, they've gone all in with Trey Lance all throughout the offseason, and hopefully he at least understands that. And I can understand maybe being a little annoyed by the fact that you're going to have to go up there and answer, questions about Jimmy Garoppolo for 7.5 minutes in that press conference last week.
Yeah. And I mean, I think people are just jumping to the conclusions that he's like worried about his spot on the team or what the locker room's going to be and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Like, all of us are speculating at this point, but just from everything that I've seen about Trey and what he's done this offseason and, just who he is as far as the caliber of person he is, I genuinely don't think he's worried about all that kind of stuff. I think it's strictly just the fact that it'll be annoying to have, the fan base be split, to have, different people posting him on social media being like, Jimmy would have done this, Jimmy would have done, I think that's the part that's annoying. And it's not like it's going to affect his game. I don't think that anything that's happening is something that is going to affect his game, even though if he does make some mistakes, which naturally any young quarterback will do, or any quarterback in general will do, people are going to legitimately create the narrative that it's because Jimmy's behind him and he's not ready or all this. We already know what's going to happen, right? I'm annoyed the fact that, us as content creators, the only reason why people don't want Jimmy on the team is this whole annoying thing that's going to happen as far as the media, the faithful, all that kind of stuff. As far as just a straight, does this make your team better or worse move? Anybody that's logical understands that this makes your team better. Like, to have the deepest quarterback room, to have a starting caliber quarterback as your backup makes your team better. God forbid you have an injury, it doesn't derail your season. Whereas 31 other teams, it most likely does derail their season if their starting quarterback goes down. So especially with a roster like the one we have, this makes your team better. Yet there are many people who are annoyed by this move, and they're not annoyed based off of what it's going to do on the football field. They're annoyed based off of what we're going to have to talk about for the next 17 weeks, right? Or unless Trey just, goes out there, drops the hammer, and shows everybody why, he is the starter.
Trey, it's time to drop the hammer.
Right.
That's right.
No pun intended.
No, and I just think that when it comes to this whole situation, I'm going to defer to a guy who's been through it a little bit, and that's Steve Young, right? I mean, he's been through it at a much different level because, Steve Young wasn't the Hall of Famer at the time when he was there, but Joe Montana had already kind of had a Hall of Fame resume brewing when he showed up, right? He'd already had 2 Super Bowls under his belt. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't have that, but
technically he does.
Right, you're right. Not from him. Not from him doing anything other than holding.
Hey, man, he was playing on that practice squad, getting Tom Brady ready. Let's be honest.
Well, then, I mean, if you want to put it that way, then him being the backup, that maybe almost guarantees that the 49ers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, right?
I put it out on Twitter, Jack. I told you the last time Jimmy Garoppolo was a backup quarterback for a team, they won the Super Bowl. So this is a premonition.
And I just, I listened to him, and I listened to him back before training camp. He was on 95.7 The Game, and he was asked about it, and he was kind of like, Trey doesn't need to be worried about if Trey's worried about Jimmy Garoppolo on the sidelines. There's bigger problems. And he kind of said the same thing earlier last week, at the end of last week on Thursday on KNBR. Very similar. What he said was not exactly the same, but a lot of the same tones. And it's like, my big takeaways were the job's not going to get any harder than it already is.
Right.
And the second one goes to the players in the locker room. And he said, you feel like the 49ers feel like they have a locker room strong enough to withstand this. And they have a Super Bowl winning team. And if the players start to whisper about making a switch from Trey to Jimmy, then this locker room isn't as strong as they thought it was, and it's not a Super Bowl locker room. And I do kind of feel that way. And I don't think that that's going to happen unless they're starting to lose games. And if they're losing games, then that's always the barometer, right? Because wins make everybody feel good. Losses are what, drive everybody crazy. We see that on our shows. If they come out and they struggle and they're losing a bunch of games, it's going to make it harder on Shanahan. But at that point, even it doesn't matter if they're losing games. They're not going to be Super Bowl team anyway. So.
And I think we got some great insight from George Kittle on Richard Sherman's podcast. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that interview, but one, I love the fact that Richard Sherman seems to be more aligned with the 49ers than he was with the Seahawks, even though he played most of his careers with the Seahawks. He definitely seems to be more in tune with the 49ers and loving them and everything that they're doing. But they gave a little bit of insight, Jack, where they talked about how, like, the team understands that this makes them better, right? As far as now, because the way they look at it, the team and the players, is that they're working so hard, they put in all this work. If their starting quarterback goes down injured, it's like a waste of a season. So now these guys have something more to play for, even if, God forbid, the injury happens to their starter. They still have the opportunity to still be competitive because Jimmy is the backup. But George Kittle also mentioned that this was Trey's team, and he talked about, all Trey needs is reps, and he's going to get those reps, and he's a really good quarterback, and he's going to get better and better with each and every rep. So I think they understand what, like, the reality of the position, reality of the situation. And as long as the team understands that, as long as Trey understands that, I think Kyle Shanahan is very good at keeping a consistent message within the locker room. I think he's shown great leadership, and I think you mentioned it even last season, how he I've always been a Shannon stan, whereas you kind of understood, hey, the leadership that he showed last season kind of got you to understand, okay, well, maybe he's a better coach than I may have not known before. But I think there's not going to be a problem with that. I do want to ask you a question, though, because I think, was it Peter King that came out and he kind of he said that by week 7, Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be the starter. What did you think about that?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if you just look at Peter King's track record of his predictions in the last when it comes to the 49ers and what's going to happen with this team over the last, since the draft of, Mac Jones at 3, all these things that he's been saying, you might as well just keep throwing mud against the wall. Eventually something's going to hit and stick.
Exactly.
Right. And I don't, if they get to week 7 and Trey Lance, and there's discussions of getting Trey Lance off the field, this team's in a world of hurt to begin with, I think.
Yeah.
And you can't, I just don't think, here's the thing. I don't think, and I've written this already, so it's not anything new. Kyle Shanahan is smart enough to understand what that move would mean, meaning benching a healthy Trey Lance for Jimmy Garoppolo. He's smart enough to know what that would mean, and I don't think it happens. I don't think that. I think the only way that Jimmy Garoppolo gets onto the field this year is if Trey Lance isn't able to play.
We saw Miami try to do it with Tua and Fitzpatrick. It's terrible, right? It doesn't work. And we saw what that did to Tua as far as, the narrative that was created around him, confidence and all that kind of stuff. And it ended up with the coaching change. It ended up with Fitzpatrick being cut or traded or whatever the case was, or not re-signed. But the one thing that really is interesting to me, and maybe it's because it's like this is the closest that I've been like tapped into the NFL because we're doing content and stuff like that. But Trey Lance has gotten, I feel like, the most criticism out of any of the quarterbacks from his draft class. Yet
Mhm.
he's played the least amount out of any of those quarterbacks. Justin Fields played half the season. Mac Jones, Wilson, and Trevor Lawrence all played. Started from the beginning. Even Davis Mills has played more games as a starter than Trey. Yet even though all of those people have up and down seasons and whatnot, um, Trey for some reason is they're already ready to bench him, like some of the people in the media, and it's so interesting to me why that's the case because I just don't think like Trey isn't somebody that I feel like rubs people the wrong way. It's just interesting to me why the national media, some people in the national media, are going at Trey the way that they are.
Well, okay. Since you asked that question again, this is something that I wrote back earlier in the off season because around why is there so much negativity around Lance from the national media, and I think it really goes back to how he showed up in San Francisco. The national media felt like they knew what who the draft pick was going to be. They kept talking, they kept saying over and over and over again that it was going to be Trey Lance. It's going to be Trey Lance. It's going
You
to be
mean
Trey
Mac
Lance.
Jones?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's going to be Mac Jones. It's going to be Mac Jones. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
Mac Jones, right? But then when the time came and the deal got in the the pick was made at 3 and now it's Trey Lance, now everybody has a bunch of egg on their face. And I think that kind of ever since then, it's like either this kid's going to be really good and he's going to blow it out of the water, or we're just going to make it as hard as we can on him in a way. And I
Right.
don't, and that just
And,
really seems to be kind of the direction that they've taken with this thing. Um,
and that sucks if that's the case. And I don't think you're wrong. It sucks because Trey Lance is a whole human being, and he's doing everything he needs to do to get himself ready for the year and be the starting caliber quarterback. It's not his fault he got drafted. Well, it is his fault because he played well enough and impressed the right people to get drafted where he got drafted.
yeah.
But at this point, give him a chance to at least show on the field before you're already writing him off before you've even seen him, be able to do. Like he's a 500 quarterback so far. So it's like, why? What are we talking about at this point? He started 2 games. He's won one of those and lost one of those. And so let's give him a chance to get 17 under his belt, and then maybe even then you shouldn't make a judgment because if you made a judgment about Peyton Manning after his first season, what would you have thought about that? You know what I mean? So it is what it is. I'm sure we can move on, but I think I'm more annoyed the fact that these guys have the audacity and the gall to go out of their way to like just not even give him a chance before they're already writing his story. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem if they were talking about the positive and negative plays he's doing. But yeah, when you start to say that he's going to get benched for Jimmy Garoppolo or whatever, those kind of things, those are the things that I don't agree with. Because it's just not the way that it's been done. And I think saying that he's going to be benched for Jimmy Garoppolo is self-serving because they're doing that so that they can continue to have something to write. It's just having a need to come up with a story, and that's just that's easy cherries to pick right there.
They're grasping for straws because they already put all their eggs in that Trey isn't going to be the guy or isn't going to be a guy. So now they're writing all the stories they could write before he gets a chance to actually prove what he is, right? So I honestly believe, Jack, they've already written up the stories week 1, week 2, week 3 of like if Trey struggles, they already have their headline, they already have 500 words written and all this kind of stuff, and they're gonna have to press delete the minute that Trey shows them different. So that's what I'm hoping happens.
Well, and that's kind of just let's transition just a little bit. That we're going to stay on Trey Lance, but we're going to transition away from the national discussion on him.
Sure.
I want to ask you, where do you think Trey Lance is going to have his biggest impact on the 49ers offense? What do you think he's going to do, or what do you think he brings that's going to change the offense from what we've seen under Garoppolo?
2 things. I think one, he's going to help the running game be more explosive, closer to what it was, back when we had the track speed and like Mostert and Breida, because he's going to be able to give these backs an extra hitch, like you like saying. Because now all of a sudden it's 11 on 11, where they have to be paying attention to if Trey has the ball or doesn't have the ball. Where before, when they had Jimmy or Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard back there, those guys weren't in the play. Like if it was a handoff, it was just a handoff, right? They just had to worry about if it was like play action or not. But in this situation, I think Trey Lance, with his ability to run, we've seen the 49ers having the willingness to run him in play action or the option, I think is going to be something that really helps out the rushing attack. And once the rushing attack is there, now all of a sudden you open up the play action, and we're going to see more explosive plays through the air because Trey is willing to throw deeper than what we naturally saw Jimmy throw. So I think that's going to really be where Trey can really open up the offense. It's not necessarily that he's just going to go out, throw the ball 30, 40 times and just bomb it down the field like you would see Mahomes or Allen or, maybe Justin Herbert. I think it's going to be the fact that now you can see these running backs, instead of averaging low 4 yards per carry, now let's get it closer to 5 yards per carry, like 4.7, 4.8 yards per carry, like we were seeing back in 2019.
Yeah. That's what you're talking about in the running game. That's where I was going with that. I said that earlier today. I wrote an article for the Press Democrat about that. You go back and you look at Kyle Shanahan's best years as an offense coordinator and as head coach. He's made the playoffs 4 times. He's been to the NFC Championship game or Super Bowl 3. All 4 of those years have a very similar theme to them, and that's that they run the ball a lot and they don't throw the ball a lot. In 2012 with Washington, that was a situation I think is a lot closer to where we are here, where they are now with Trey Lance. Having a mobile running quarterback, as opposed to Matt Ryan and Jimmy Garoppolo, who are not mobile and those types of things. But all three of those teams, the 49ers in 19 and 21, Washington in 12, and then Atlanta in 16, they ran the ball a lot. And so, you go back and you look at last year when Lance played in his 2 starts, they ran the ball 54% of the time, which is right around the same percentage. One less run, and they're at 52%, which is what the Washington team was. And then you look at it one step further, and you look at the 2 games that Lance started last year against Arizona and Houston. Yep. And the 49ers ran in those 2 games, they averaged 5 yards a carry, 5.03. In the other 15 games, they averaged 4.23, or right around that number. So that's a big improvement. And it goes back to what you said. You hit it already. So I'm just kind of repeating what you said in that Lance's threat is very similar to like Deebo Samuel, right? When Deebo Samuel's moving around the formation, everybody needs to pay attention to where he's going. So he kind of affects the defense. And it's the same thing with Trey Lance on those zone read when he's out of the shotgun. You've got to hold just long enough to see if he's given it or not. And just that split second of indecision allows your offensive lineman to get into their blocks and allows the running back to start getting up the field if he does give it. So I think that's where the biggest impact is going to come. And all that running plays right into what I think is going to be the strength of Trey Lance, and that's his ability to make the throws off of play action and really kind of the shot plays. He's going to be able to push the ball down the field off of those. And so, his completion percentage, I don't think is going to be as high as what we've seen with Jimmy Garoppolo, but I think the net result of the passing offense is probably going to be relatively close.
And I think it's a must as well, Jack, because so one thing that's going to be different, we talked about how he's going to impact in a positive way. His release isn't as quick as Jimmy's, and Jimmy's really elite with his quick release. He's a very accurate quarterback. A lot of that is because he doesn't take as many chances as other quarterbacks. He's throwing, within 10 yards and 10 to 15 yards. But nonetheless, he was elite at it. He's very quick with his release. That, obviously makes it easier to be a pass blocker when your quarterback's getting the ball out quicker. Now, one thing with Trey is his release isn't as quick. and he's somebody that wants to make a play. So we don't really know what his decision making is going to be as far as when that rush is attacking. If let's say the offensive line is a little more porous than in previous years, which a lot of people are projecting that it could be because of all the youth there and inexperience. Trey Lance's quick release would be or lack of a quick release could lead to more sacks. So making the rushing attack work, that it's impactful, and him throwing off of play action gives him more time to be able to make those throws versus a pass rush in his face. So I think that's extremely important that they do establish the run, just because the two biggest, I guess, question marks on the offense is this offensive line and Trey Lance's quick release or lack thereof.
Yeah, I'm just the only thing I'm gonna say on on the offensive line portion of what you're talking about there is that I think the run game, in some ways, when you're running play action, helps you out a little bit because they do play the run a little bit, right? In that it should slow them down just a touch. And then
that's the point that I was making. It needs the rushing attack needs to be impactful to give them more time, because if it's just a straight pass rush, that's the question mark for the 49ers right now.
Yep. And then the other piece of it too, I think, is that Trey Lance needs to be better himself. If we go back and if we were to dissect his game against Houston, I think that there was more struggles with Trey Lance than there. I don't think it was so much the offense. I know their offensive line was not good, but I don't think the offensive line was quite as bad as it looked, because the quarterback wasn't getting the ball out of his hand on time. So there's a little bit of a yin and yang with that whole situation.
Trey Lance didn't help the situation. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to put it. Yeah, you see, you're better with me. You just get instead of being so many words, you're able just to get right to the.
I understand. I speak jackhammer. I'm just trying to be out here and translate for the folks.
No, that's good. I appreciate you doing that, because I need that sometimes. Trust me. But I think that's it too. And that's I've we saw the thing. I've heard a few different people who I think know quite a bit about the game who have made the same comment and kind of come away with that same feeling after watching the Texans game. So we'll see. It's going to be a work in progress. I think if you keep him to around 26 passes a game, that's about where he was last year. If they can keep him in that ballpark, I think it's going to be fine. And you get the running game going. They've got enough of guys around him. You let him get his feet underneath him. And if he can get more comfortable, then he can start to take off.
Right. And I mean, we haven't really seen Kyle Shanahan come up with a game plan for a whole offseason based off of Trey Lance, right? So we've seen him only really scheme for Jimmy and his strengths and weaknesses. Now we get to see what Shanahan's mind does as far as scheming towards Trey Lance's strengths and weaknesses. And if you believe in Shanahan as a play caller, you're pretty excited to see what he could do. And I think that's going to help Trey Lance as well when they get to open up the full playbook and really show what Kyle Shanahan has been working on this whole offseason.
Yeah, and that leads right into the next question that I was going to ask you was, when you look at the 2.5 games that Lance played extensively in, which was the second half against Seattle. I know he was thrown in at halftime, but then the game plan for him for the Arizona game and the game plan for him for Houston. In those 2.5 games, the 49ers averaged 18.8 points. You kind of answered this question. The 49ers are going to be able to improve upon that this year, and if so, why?
Yeah, so I believe they will, and I believe they have to. One of the biggest, and I think it's the thing that's talked least about from the faithful and 49er content creators, Jack, is the inconsistency that the offense has shown, their inability to put together 4 good quarters of football from an offensive side. The defense has done it game after game after game, which is why the offense had a chance to actually catch up, and the 49ers were able to win, especially in the second half of the season last year. Their inability to score in the first half, I think, is something that needs to change, and I think something that will change with Trey Lance at the helm because of his effectiveness running the ball. I think that you can, the 3 and outs will be limited, but I do think that they'll be able to score more than 18. I think they're even going to be able to average more points than they did last season. I think they averaged around 24 points per game last season?
I think you're right in that ballpark. Yeah.
23, 24 points. I could see them averaging closer to 27 points this year, just because of Trey Lance's ability to take the ball deep, and his ability to run, which means he can keep the drives going. I would really want to see this team be able to average more than what I think it was like. I think they ended up at the end of the season averaging about 11 points in the first half, which seems okay, right? Especially if you're scoring 24 throughout the whole game. But if you take out the last 2 minutes of the half, that drastically drops because they were really scoring in 2-minute drills. And if the 2-minute drills are the plays where it's like a smaller playbook, you're going more off of instinct and actually schemes and stuff like that. So the fact that they aren't able to score within their playbook in the first half, I think was a big issue last season, and something that doesn't get talked about because they were eventually able to win. That's something that I think can really bite the 49ers this year in the butt if they're not able to be consistent in the first quarter, because then it turns them into a one-dimensional team, Jack. And now you have to ask a young quarterback that averaged 16 passes in his only year starting in college to now have to air out the ball to play catch up. And I don't know if that's a situation that, the 49ers want to be in, or put that type of pressure on Trey this early in his career.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I'm not even going to necessarily go totally just with Lance too. I think Lance is a portion of it. I think they can, if they're going to get over 18.8, the reason that they do is because you have better special teams play. I think the defense is going to, I think the defense
will be more opportunistic.
Is built in front of, yeah. I think if their special teams is improved and their defense is more opportunistic, that puts you in shorter field situations, which allows you to score more points. That's kind of was partly why they put up so much in 2019. They had a lot of good field position with turnovers in that season and pick sixes and all that kind of stuff. So I think that can be a part of it. My only concern really when it comes to the 49ers with Trey Lance, my big concern, and the reason why I would say I'm not sure that they're going to be, at 24 points like they were last year, which is different than what the original question was. But my only concern there is the lack of a rhythm that we've seen so far with Trey Lance, right? If you go back to his game against Arizona, it was really herky-jerky, right? A lot of fits and starts. Even against Houston, it was like that until the fourth quarter. Through the first 6 quarters of play, they put up 20 points total. 10 in Arizona, 10 against Houston, and then they put up 13 in the fourth quarter against the Texans. So it's just a matter of, can they get into rhythm? And that goes back to your question. And a number of other people have said this to me when I asked the question on Twitter today. It's, we're going to see a game plan built around Trey Lance, and he's either going to succeed or he's going to fail. So it's going to be fun to watch, and it's going to be fun to see how it plays out.
And the only pushback I have on that, Jack, is that rhythm wasn't there for Jimmy either. So I don't know if you could put that on the quarterback. I think it's just the offense overall. Like I said, this could be feelings over facts. I'd have to look at the actual game, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. But I would say that a majority of the points that Jimmy scored in the first half were in the last 2 minutes of the half, when it was the 2-minute drill, 4-minute drill, something like that. It wasn't in the flow of the game. It wasn't in the rhythm of the game. It was literally just prevent defenses, and he was doing the 2-minute drill, throwing in quick passes to Debo, quick passes to IU, quick passes to Kittle that would end up, being, more yards because the defense was playing soft. So I think rhythm for the offense is an issue regardless of who's quarterback back there. I don't think Jimmy had a good rhythm at all through last season. I agree with you that Trey didn't have. That's something that needs to be fixed, Kyle Shanahan needs to go to the drawing board and figure out why in the first half can we not score on script, right? And I just think that's a big issue for the 49ers overall.
I think some of it, too, is in both of those games, Kyle Shanahan managed the game differently with Trey Lance than he did with Jimmy Garoppolo. Instead of taking the points and kicking field goals on 4th and short and positions where they could have put points on the board, he went for it and they got stopped. Mm-hmm. You know, they had a number of those against Arizona in the first matchup out in Arizona with Lance. That game had a lot of problems back and forth. But then, you know, and they did the same thing early on against Houston. There was a couple of times, at least once that I remember, where they were in field goal range. They went for it on 4th down and they got stuffed on a run instead of kicking a field goal. So there's game management things with Shanahan as well, thinking that he's going to be able to, you know, maybe a little more aggressive with Lance because of the running ability. So it's going to be, it's not just Trey Lance, it's also Kyle Shanahan. So it's going to be interesting to see if those two can get on the same page.
Right.
So that being said, we've talked a lot about Trey Lance, a lot about the quarterback situation and the locker room and all those kind of things. 49ers have a game in a few days. They're going to get week 1 against Chicago. What are you looking to learn about the 49ers this week?
Yeah, so we talked about one of the things. One of the things is how fluid this offense could be. Can they put together 4 good quarters? I really want to see them be able to score in the first half, because that's something that I think did very little in last season. So that's one thing. Can they sustain drives? Can they get that running game back to being effective? And that's one side. But the other side is on the defensive end. And I want to be like, I know after week 8, Jack, that the 49ers ended up like being able to stop the run a lot better than they did in the first half of the season. But there's 2 things that have usually been an Achilles heel for the 49ers. And one of it is stopping the run. The other thing is mobile quarterbacks. And Chicago isn't that great of a team, but 2 things that they will have is a mobile quarterback and a running game, right? Because they have 2 good running backs in Chicago. So I think this is a really good test for the 49ers, because the 2 things that are usually weaknesses for the 49ers defense are the 2 things that I think the Chicago Bears are going to utilize a lot, because it's really all they have. I was looking at the depth chart, Jack, for the Chicago Bears receivers, and when I saw that Dante Pettis could play a big role in this game, I knew the Chicago Bears were hurting, because the names on their depth chart are just guys that you're not really familiar with outside of maybe Mooney. Everybody else has been a backup before or a young player, so that you really don't know about. And definitely the skill level as far as the roster and the amount of talent, 49ers are way more talented than the Chicago team. So they have a bigger window. Like they don't have to play their best game, and they still should be able to overcome based off of just the talent alone. But like I said, Justin Fields rushed for over 100 yards last season against the 49ers. And they didn't have David Montgomery last year when they played the 49ers. David Montgomery is a very good running back. They have Khalil Herbert there, who's another good running back. And they still have Justin Fields there, who's supposedly playing a revenge game and looking to make the 49ers regret passing him up. So I just want to see if this defense could stick to their containment. How do they play the rush? How well can Kinlaw replace what they're losing in DJ Jones? And those are the things that I really want to see and learn.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, because this is going to be a wet game. It's supposed to be pretty rainy out there in Chicago, which is, I think, going to change some of the way that this game is going to go down. I think Justin Fields and his ability to move around is going to cause some problems for the 49ers. It did last year, right? It did last year for the 49ers when they played them in Chicago. It just eventually, the 49ers were eventually able to overcome it, thanks to Deebo Samuel, a couple of big plays by Deebo Samuel. But I think that for me, I want to see how this running game looks. I want to see if they're able to do some of these different looks that we've seen them not necessarily show in the preseason games, but we've seen them show during the during the training camp and so on. We just want to see that play out. I want to see what this defense looks like too. I don't know if we're really going to see what this whole secondary looks like because of the weather again, but I want to see this. I want to see this defense. Is this defense what we've been kind of led to believe? Because there were times when they tore apart the 49ers offense during training camp. I want to see if that translates to other teams, or was it just because they were beating up on the backup tackles of the 49ers, right? So let's see what this is like. So is this defense as good as everybody said it is? Is the run game is going to be as good as everybody thinks it's going to be? And then there's the Trey Lance piece. And can Trey Lance is he able to play within himself for 4 quarters and make some plays and help the team win? So it's going to be those are the things for me when I look at this game and kind of how it sets up.
It's interesting too, Jack, because this offseason the 49ers made a concerted effort in two departments, right? The secondary, obviously bringing Travarius Ward in, and the special teams, bringing in all the specialists there. I wonder which one's going to play out first. Is it going to be the secondary and their ability to maybe make some turnovers and things like that? Because you would think that Ward and Mosley shouldn't have a problem with, the receivers that Chicago has. Or is this special teams going to make an impact with the gunners that they have and Ray McLeod out there? Is he going to be able to make some big plays? So it's interesting to see, where the 49ers focus most this offseason, which plays out first. Yeah,
no, it's going to be really interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this whole thing is going to shake out for them. I think it's going to be the one big piece of this game that's going to be the equalizer here is the weather. Chicago doesn't have a really good track to begin with, and then you put some water on it, like it's expected to be some pretty heavy rain in Chicago on Sunday. I think that's going to change. That's another piece too, right? A lot of us, myself included, have thought this is a game that the Flyers are going to be able to just kind of blow through them. The rain could be the big equalizer, and that'll be something to keep an eye on.
Let's just knock on wood that ACLs all stay intact.
There you go. And then let me ask you, this will be our final question. It's a 2-parter. Who is going to be the offensive star, and who do you think is the defensive star on Sunday?
Great question.
Chicago?
So
the person
offensively,
who put that together is a very smart person.
Yeah, give him kudos. So the offensive player that I think is going to show out the most, and let's hope that he actually starts, because that would be bad for me to say his name and he doesn't even play, but it's going to be Elijah Mitchell for me, right? He's somebody we haven't seen this whole offseason as far as preseason games and things like that. It's the most important aspect of the offense. I think Elijah Mitchell is the guy that, and I think this is the defense that he's going up against that he can have a very successful day against, especially like you mentioned, the rain. They're probably going to be focused on the run more than passing it. So I think Elijah Mitchell ends up having a pretty big game. And I think he'll be the offensive player of the game. Defensive side, you got to go with the Bear. Nick Bosa, man. I feel like Nick Bosa wants to be defensive player of the year this year. I think he wants to set all types of sack records. Even though, they're both Ohio State boys, I think that, he wants to derail this whole Justin Fields revenge game and get a hold of Justin Fields, a couple of times, 2-3 times. And I think they have the defensive line to do it. And I think that if the 49ers play the way that I expect them to play and can get out with a lead early in the first half, they turn Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears into a one-dimensional offense that could bode very, very well for this defensive line. So I'm going Nick Bosa on the defensive side, Elijah Mitchell on the offensive side.
Gotcha. I like the Elijah Mitchell one. That was kind of what the direction I was going to head. You kind of went the direction.
I'm still in your thunder, man. You need to stop letting me go first.
I do. But I'll start off on the defensive side first, though. I do like the pick of Bosa as well. I'm going to go, though, with Fred Warner. If this is a game, if it is a game in which there's a lot of running, the 49er linebackers need to be able to step up. They're a big piece of the 49er linebackers are a big part of stopping the run. It's like that with every team, but the 49ers struggled early on. Remember last year in the first couple of weeks of the season, they really struggled to stop the run.
Mm-hmm.
Remember they had some struggles
that's how
Detroit.
Detroit got back into the game, right?
Yeah, that along with the onside kickoff of George Kittle's face. But it's if Fred Warner and the linebacking crew can step up, I'm going to go with Fred Warner because he's the man in the middle. If he can step up and play well, that's going to be a boon for the 49ers defense. That'll help with stopping the running game from Chicago, and that allows Bosa to have his big game if they have to try to throw because they're getting shut down on the ground. And so I'm going to go with Warner on defense, and on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with Deebo Samuel. I'm going to go a little bit different direction. I'm still kind of in the way that you're talking about the need to pound it with Elijah Mitchell. I think you kind of do that a little bit with Deebo. You can do that with Deebo Samuel. It's not necessarily up the middle, but it's just those constant little, the constant short balls. Get the ball to him on the screens, get him in the backfield a little bit. I think we're going to see him run it a couple of times out of the backfield as well. I'm going to say Deebo Samuel is going to make some plays. It's going to be the difference for the 49ers offense in this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I think is being under talked about because it seems like the connection between Trey and Deebo isn't quite there as far as the timing and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be interesting these last 2 weeks where it's been like just the team practicing without cameras and all that kind of stuff, how well that connection is going into week one, because it did seem a little bit off in the preseason.
Yeah. It was a little bit, but I think it's coming around, and it's going to be if I was to ask you for a prediction on this game, what would your prediction be in terms of a score prediction?
I'm going 24-13 49ers.
24-13, and is it a game where the 49ers are kind of leading throughout, or are they pulling away at the end?
Yeah, I don't think this game will ever be in doubt.
Okay. I think it's going to be a little bit closer. I don't have a number right now in mind. I want to get your opinion. I ask the smart people the questions, and then I give mine later on. But
I have a question for you because I think it may play a role. What's the chances of McGlinchey starting?
I don't think we'll know until tomorrow.
Okay.
Because there was no practice today, and we'll see if he's out. I think if he's out there practicing tomorrow, that he was going to be good to go. I think the chances are much more in favor of him starting than not.
I think that's a great sign. I think if McGlinchey's there, I'm even more confident it's not even a close game.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week with McGlinchey and Williams on the outside of this offensive line. The 49ers are so much better than what we saw during the preseason for most of it. So I think this is going to be a little bit tighter game. Week one games sometimes they can be weird, right? The first couple of weeks of the season, a lot of times are a little off. You have weird things happen, and I just have a feeling that that's going to be the weather. The fact that it's in Chicago on the road again, I just think this game's going to be a little bit closer than people are thinking. I think I think it's 7.5 is the spread. I think I'd probably go. I don't know if I would take the 49ers plus 7.5 in this one. I think it's going to be. They might get to 7. They might be a little bit over, but it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be more than 10. So.
Well, I love the fact that we get to be back on next Tuesday and find out who was right and who was wrong.
Absolutely. That's the best part of doing this, right? We're neither one of us is throwing anybody under the bus, and we're able to come back and have the discussion about it next week.
Do you have any doubt that the 49ers get the W?
I think the 49ers are the better team. I think the only way that they lose this game is if they kind of the same way they lost so often in the first half. If they just don't protect the football and they don't play well on offense or on defense, but if they are turning the ball over and they're getting penalties and those kind of things, that's how I see they lose this. If they play it doesn't have to be mistake free, but if they just play a somewhat clean game, I think they win because they're just the more talented team.
So much. And the level of talent is so different, right? Like Chicago really isn't a good roster. I don't know what their front office is doing. They haven't set Justin Fields up for success at all. But if the 49ers struggle in this game, Jack, it's going to be rough in the media for them because there's no reason why this team, even if they don't play a clean game, doesn't win by 2 scores. I think.
There you go. And we got Jaguayo. He comes with the super chat. Thank you, Jay. He says, Ed Jack, Womack on D, he's going to have an interception, and then Kittle's going to have a touchdown on offense. So that's a really good one. If they can do that, I think that bodes well for their chances of winning this game.
I would love to see Kittle be utilized in the red zone a lot more than he's utilized. That would be a good change to see.
Well, that'll be a part, something to watch, just overall, not even just George Kittle, but the Furnace receivers as a whole getting used in the red zone more often than what we've seen. They've been very run heavy in that area of the field. And,
right.
If Kittle can get on Kittle, if they can just get the ball to Kittle, I think it's going to help out their offense so much. And he's done really well. Keep that, get him the ball, let him do what he does. Same thing with Deebo Samuel. Flyers just have so much talent on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and you haven't even mentioned Ayuk, who's going to be the breakout player this year.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. I think he's gonna have probably his best season of his career, or he's at least primed for it. So we'll see how it turns out.
And he loves to eat against the Bears. That's where he's had some big games for him. So let's see.
Against the Bears.
Yeah, he had a big game against the Bears last year?
Did he? I don't remember.
Yeah.
I remember Deebo Samuel had a big game against the Bears, a deep ball, and then the screen that he took, that was like the one that saved the season. But you see a bunch of people in the comment section also talking about how hot it is. I saw 116, I think of 114. It's 114 where I am. So Suneil's up in he's in the cooler.
Yeah, I got out of the heat from LA to Portland, so it's pretty rough. I was waiting outside for my lift for like 2 minutes and started sweating. I'm like, oh boy. Thank God it was air conditioned all the way there.
There you go. Well, Suneil, I really appreciate you coming on. It's always fun to chat with you on Tuesdays, and I'm looking forward to the season we have ahead.
Absolutely, man. And I always appreciate you letting me on. I am trying to hit 1,000 before the season starts. The season starts in just a few days. I'm pretty close. I'm like I'm 50 followers or something around there away from being able to hit 1,000. So if you guys can out there, please go to my channel, So Real Sports Talk TV, and give me a subscribe. See some of the content on there. See if you like it. It means a great deal to me.
Yeah, if you guys do me a favor, go over there. If you're already subscribed to my channel, you should subscribe to Suneil's as well. He puts on great content. He talks with. I know he does a show regularly with Rohan, who is going to be doing shows with me. We're going to get together on Thursday, and Suneil just works really hard at what he's doing here.
People be stealing my guys all the time. Luckily, this one's a good one because the last one I put on to the 49ers, I got killed for. But I just know if they come on my channel, they're going to start, exploding some elsewhere in 49er content creation.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about your first one. That was an all-timer for sure there, Suneil. But yeah, get over to Suneil's channel, give him some love. Make sure you're subscribing over there. Before you leave here, if you aren't already subscribed to my channel and you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button on your way out as well. Little bell notification action so you get notified when we go live. And then get yourself to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. That's the Inside the 49ers blog. Put up a new article today on Trey Lance. So go check that out. Just want to say thanks again to Suneil. Thanks to everybody in the comment section that keeps us going, and all the subscribers and everybody else. So thank you all a lot. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. I will be back Thursday with Rohan. Keep it locked into the channel, though. I will be at practice tomorrow, so there should be some content. Yeah, even though I won't be hosting the show. Take care, everybody.